everyone, it's Shaan Patel, and today we're back with The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. We'll be reading Chapter 5. If you recall from the last chapter, the time traveler went to the future and met these strange little people. Let's hop right into it. Strange little people. Now that I had a chance for a closer look at these future men, I noticed some strange qualities. They all had curly hair that ended sharply at the neck and cheek. Their china-like faces had no trace of hair. They had an unusually small ears, pointy chins, and tiny mouths with thinnish red lips. As for their eyes, they were large with dull look to them, as if they're not much interested in the world around them. They just stood there smiling, speaking softly, and cooing to each other. Clearly, it was up to me to start the conversation, if we were going to communicate at all. I thought I would begin by pointing to the craft, time machine, I said. Then I touched my chest. I came from in a time machine. There was no response so far. To express the idea of time the way I traveled, I pointed to the sun. Sun, I said. You know, planets go round and round, make days and months and years. Silence. Then one of the little purple-clad creatures stepped forward. He too pointed skyward, but still did not speak. 802,701 AD, I thought. Man must have become very bright. Maybe he's reading my mind and instantly translating my language. I could hardly wait to hear what he would have to say. What brilliant evidence of wisdom in the art of science or the universe will his comments reveal? I wondered. To my intense disappointment, all he did was point at the sun and go, blam. Imitation of a thunderclap. Good Lord, his response showed me that his mentality was one of a 5-year-old children. He wanted to know if I'd come from the sun in a thunderstorm. For a moment, I felt I'd built the time machine for nothing. So this future man, I thought, light limb, fragile face, and baby brain. I nodded, pointed to the sun, and made a loud thunder sound. Blam. Startled, they drew back a few steps and bowed. Then one laughing man came back, carrying a chain of beautiful flowers. He put it around my neck as the others cooed and applauded. They all began to run to and from for flowers, and laughingly flung them at me until I was almost smothered in the most fantastic blossoms I'd ever seen. These delicate, colorful blossoms were obviously the result of many centuries of culture. I stared in wonder at the blue-green puffs and rosy-orange clusters and gold-fringed ruffles. Their aroma was like shop counter of perfume bottles suddenly uncapped. Then, one of them must have decided that I should be exhibited to all their people, so they led me gently past the white sphinx to a vast gray building of rigid stone. Crowds of little people were gathered by enormous doors, which opened before me, shadowy and mysterious. The arch of the doorway, I noted as I passed through, had ancient carvings on it. These carvings were badly broken and weather-worn. Looks like this place had seen better days, I said. The big doorway opened into a great hall, whose roof was in shadows. Its shadows were partly coated with colored glass and partly uncoated, an effect which let in softened light, and the floor was made of huge blocks of very hard white metal. Plenty of footsteps. Whole generations, then, must have worn these tracks, thought I, looking at most often unused routes. Long, low tables made of polished stone slabs and raised about a foot off the floor filled the hall. An abundance of cushions were scattered about, and the little ones who had brought me promptly plumped themselves down on them. They motioned for me to do likewise, and I did so. I looked around the hall and slowly was amazed by its broken down appearance. The stained glass windows were cracked in many places. The curtains on their lower end were thick with dust, and corners of marble tables were chipped. Without any ceremony, the little people reached for the fruits and heaped on their tables. They began to eat them with their hands, flinging peels and pits in the rounds opening on the sides of the table. It looks like every day is a picnic here, I said. Well, I'm both hungry and thirsty, so count me in, and thank you. Except for some rather over-dried raspberries and oranges, the fruit was all completely new to me. However, after tasting a blue cottony blob, a purplish wire, and a little green heart, I found them to be juicy and filling. "Say, this tastes good," I said, as I held up the flowery beige thing in a 3-sided shell. "What do you call it?" They just giggled and went on eating. I found out later that the fruit was the only food they ate. They must be vegetarians, I reasoned, because horses, cattle, sheep, and dogs and birds had probably become extinct. I decided the next thing for me to do was to learn their language. This proved to be a harder job than I expected. Holding up one of the fruit, I asked again, "What do you call this?" My question was met with the blank stares. I picked up another fruit, pointed to it, and said again, "What's your word for this?" I even raised my eyebrows in a questioning expression. Again, nothing but stares and laughter. Finally, one fair-haired creature caught on and murmured, "Glinna." "Glinna," I quickly repeated. They began to chatter and explain the business at great length to each other. "Glinna, Glinna, Glinna," went down the line with lots of giggling and pointing. My first attempts to imitate the little musical sounds of the language brought on peals of laughter. It was a strange situation. Here I was, trying to learn from them. But I felt like a serious school teacher among a class of playful children. I persisted, though, and after some time, I at least could name a few things in the language. I learned Arla, Arna, and even the all-important Numni, this, that, and to eat. But it was hard work getting them to pay attention. I never met people who were more lazy and more easily tired. I was amazed, too, by their lack of interest. Here I was, strange and different-looking creature, dropped into their midst. Oh, they would come up to me with eager cries of surprise, all right? But then, like children bored with a new toy, they would wander away in search of something else to play. When I walked out of the great hall, the calm of the evening was on the world, lit by the warm glow of the setting sun. I should get a wider view of our planet in the year 802,701, I thought. I therefore decided to climb to the top of a crest about 1.5 miles away. Everything I passed looked so different. Even the Thames River, so close to my home in Richmond, seemed to have shifted its position a mile away. Little way up the hill, I came upon a big granite metal ruin, the remains of some vast structure. Amid its crumbled walls were thick heaps of beautiful pagoda-shaped bushes with tinted brown leaves. What could this building have been used for originally, I wondered? Although I couldn't have known it at this time, I was right there that I would have soon have a very weird experience and get the first hint of an even weirder discovery. But more of that later. Chapter 6. Thank you all for tuning in today. That's all for Chapter 5. Leave a comment on what you think is happening, because the time traveler said something weird is going on. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. See you all next time.